Thank you for tuning into today's presentation on variance applications. I am Isai Chavez, planner with the Planning and Zoning Department. And in the upcoming slides, you will be learning how to submit a variance application, that is, the required documents, and how you want to approach answering those variance criteria questions and how to submit a complete application to the Planning and Zoning Department. The first thing you want to know is whether or not your particular circumstance merits a variance application. Here are some examples. Let's say you built a shed that is 6 feet from the side property line when the zoning code setback requires 10 feet. You are proposing to build a pool that is 7 feet from the rear property line, but the zoning code setback requires 10 feet. You built a home that is 35 feet from the rear property line, but the PUD document that governs your HOA requires a 40-foot setback when a lot backs up into a lake. Or any kind of deviation, whether it be proposed or existing, from our citywide design standards, our zoning code, our sign code, landscaping requirements. If you're trying to deviate from some kind of code section, some kind of city requirement, then you're going to need a variance application. On this slide, you'll see the various required documents that you will need to submit with your variance application. There's, of course, the application itself, which we'll later go through as to how to find it online. Be the warranty deed showing that you are indeed the owner of this lot that you are seeking a variance for. A survey showing the setbacks. This has to be a signed and sealed survey for the existing or proposed structure that you want a variance for. And if another type of variance, let's say it's something that you are deviating from the landscape code, then of course you'll need those plans and drawings of what you're proposing. If all required documents are attached to the online application, it will be reviewed by the planning staff and scheduled for a Planning and Zoning Board meeting if it is applicable. And we're going to go through those scenarios of when you would need to go to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, which is a public hearing. If the variance is for a main structure or accessory structure that is proposed, not existing, if it is a proposed house or a proposed pool that you want to build, it automatically has to go to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and the planning staff will review it for sufficiency and determine that when they receive the application and schedule it for the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, depending on the deadline which you meet. And we'll go over that schedule in the upcoming slide. If the variance is for an existing or proposed deviation from the design standards or zoning code or sign code or landscaping requirements from these other code sections other than, say, setbacks, then it doesn't matter if the structure is existing or proposed. In that case, it will go to the P&Z board. What is important to know here is it only matters if it's proposed or existing if we're talking about setbacks. Finally, if the variance is of 3 feet or more for the setbacks of an existing main or accessory structure, main will refer to, say, a house, accessory structure can be a pool. If it is 3 feet or more of an existing structure, then it will go to the P&Z board. If not, if it is less than 3 feet, then it can be reviewed administratively by Planning and Zoning Department, and final approval will be given by the Planning and Zoning Director and will not need to go to a public hearing. Here's the schedule for the Planning and Zoning Board. To the left, you'll see the submittal deadlines. To the right, you'll see when the actual meeting date will be. And again, if you have submitted all your documents as shown in the previous couple of slides, then you will be able to go to that hearing date, assuming you submitted your complete application by the submittal deadline. Otherwise, until the application is complete, as determined by planning staff, it will not be scheduled for the P&Z board hearing. These are the differences between the applications in terms of the one that's going to the P&Z board and the one that's not going to the P&Z board. If you know ahead of time which one you fall into, which you should know if you've done your homework and you've reached out to the Planning and Zoning Department, you've talked to the planner of the day, and you know what kind of variance that you're requesting, then you will know which application you'll need to fill out and attach to the application that you will submit online. The difference here is that, as you can see, the one that is not going to the P&Z board says administrative in front of it, and the one that is going to the P&Z board will just say variance application. The variance criteria questions is probably the most important part of the application that you will fill out. And this criteria is really what the Planning and Zoning Board members, or if it's an administrative variance and it's planning staff only reviewing it, they're going to look at is to see your responses to these criteria questions. These are in the code, and so you are required to answer them and answer them as truthfully, as honestly, and as knowledgeable as you can be given your variance application. So we're going to go through each one so that you know how you should be answering these questions as you go through them. So the first variance criteria question is, please explain the special conditions and circumstances that exist, which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved and which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district. If the variance is for an existing structure, explain why the structure was built so close to the property line. If we're talking about a variance for a setback. If the variance is for a proposed structure, explain why the variance is necessary to build the structure that you want to build at this particular lot. Second criteria question is, please explain if these conditions and circumstances result from actions by the applicant. Again, if it's for an existing structure, explain if the variance is required as a result of your actions or a representative of yours. If it's for a proposed structure, explain if the variance is required because of something you are proposing or your representative is proposing. That is, your representative meaning the one who is submitting the application. The third criteria question is, please explain how granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant special privilege that is denied by the chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. So you want to explain why this variance won't give you privileges that aren't available to your neighbors, for example. Fourth criteria question, explain how a literal interpretation of the provisions of the chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the chapter and would work unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. So you want to explain how not receiving this variance will hurt your personal endeavors. Let's say, for example, that you are requesting this variance because you're trying to sell your existing home. But of course, to do so, the title company won't give you a clear title until this is taken care of because the home was built closer to the property line than code allows. So in that case, you can put that truthfully you cannot proceed with the sale of your home until you are granted a variance so as to get a clear title and proceed with the sale. Fifth criteria question, please illustrate and explain the variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Acknowledge that only through this variance can what you are asking for become a reality. Sixth criteria question, please indicate how granting the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purposes of the chapter, and that granting the variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. You'll want to explain how receiving this variance will place you on equal footing with neighboring properties. And the last and final criteria question, you're essentially acknowledging that you will comply with the P&Z Board's decision regarding your variance application. However, that does not in any way mean that you're acknowledging that you cannot appeal the board's decision as stated by the code. There is a formal process of appeal, which we will talk about briefly, should your variance be denied. What about planning staff? Because the truth of the matter is, when you submit your application, it doesn't go directly to the Planning and Zoning Board members. Yes, they do accept or deny your variance, but they first of all look at what planning staff has reviewed, and they take that as expert advice regarding the variance that you are requesting. And as surprising as this may seem, planning staff actually look at the same variance criteria questions that you look at. But they look at it from a slightly different lens. And when they answer these questions, they are looking at code requirements. In other words, how this variance differs or agrees with the written code. Whether your variance application is going before a public hearing or not, it is a code requirement to notify neighbors within 750 feet of your property. They will receive notice via mail and are given the opportunity to comment on your application through writing, say email or a letter. It has to be a written comment though if they want their comments to be considered. So whether or not this is an administrative variance or a variance that's going to Planning and Zoning Board, your neighbors will be notified and will be given the opportunity to comment, whether it just be through writing, or the other option is, if they want their comments to be considered, they can come to the Planning and Zoning Board hearing. Once your variance is approved, if it is approved, obviously there's never a guarantee, but if it is approved, you will receive a letter via email from the planner reviewing your application stating that your variance has been approved and the terms of that approval. You will notice that that variance approval letter is very specific to the variance that you are requesting, so as to leave no doubt that since this variance was granted, it was granted only for the circumstances of which you as the applicant applied for, and does not apply to any other future encroachments. If you are asking for a variance for something else or a different setback, it could be the same structure, but if it's not the same terms of this variance application, you will need to submit another variance application. And then finally, an ordinance will be recorded by a legal department. It's an ordinance that will be recorded with the city clerk's office that will essentially make this an official record. And it is something that you will receive most likely at a later date. The first thing that you will receive is that approval letter by planning staff, essentially making it official in terms of your dealings or official to you. If your variance application is denied by the Planning and Zoning Board, you have two options. Of course, you can accept the board's verdict and move on, or you can submit an appeal with the city clerk's office. You have 15 days within the date of the board's decision. And in order to know what that process looks like, you would have to contact the city clerk's office and they'll walk you through how that appeals process works. And what would happen essentially is once you've walked through those steps and they've scheduled you for another hearing, for an appeal hearing essentially, you will be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals, which for our city is City Council. With that, we have concluded the first part of this presentation. I'm going to move on to show you where to find some of these things like the variance application online and also how to submit it. So moving on to the variance application tutorial part 2, here's how to find a variance application on our website. First, go to cityofpsl.com/pzapplications. Then scroll down to the Applications widget. Under this widget, you will find both the application for a variance that would go to the P&Z board, the one that just says variance, and a variance that would not go to the P&Z board, the one that says variance administrative. You can see both applications are the same with the exception that one says administrative and the other does not. You will fill out the variance application that corresponds to your case and attach it to your online application. Let's find out how you would submit online. Return to the page where you find the variance application, scroll up, and on the left-hand side, you will find a green button that says Fusion. Select it. Fusion is our new online system for submitting all our development review applications. On the left-hand side, you will see Begin Submission. Select that. If you are logging in for the first time, you will need to create an account first by selecting Create a New Account. Once you're logged in, the online application will show up. For project type, select Variance, then Next. Under Type, select Commercial or Residential depending on the proposed or existing structure you are seeking a variance for. For this example, let's select Residential. The Describe the Request box is perhaps the most important part of this application and is an opportunity for you to clearly outline what your variance request consists of. For this example, I'm going to say, seeking a variance of 3.5 feet to allow a side setback of 6.5 feet for a proposed home. The odd shape of the lot won't allow a setback that complies with the city's minimum requirements. Then Next. The legal description for your property can be found in the County Property Appraiser site. If you're in a regular single-family lot in the city, it will be in the following format: Port St. Lucie, Section 72, Block 10, Lot 88. If you live in an HOA, this format will be different. The parcel number can be found in the County Property Appraiser site. It will be a 15-digit number. The location of project site is simply using north, south, east, and west to give an approximation of where your property is located. For example, south of Crosstown Parkway and east of Iroso. You will always want to reference major roads. If you're in a regular single-family lot in the city, your zoning will typically be single-family RS2. If you live in an HOA, it will typically be Planned Unit Development, PUD. But it is good practice to find out for sure. Please refer to our zoning map tutorial found in cityofpsl.com/pzapplications to learn how to find the zoning for a specific property. The last thing you want to pay attention to under the Property Info tab is whether the administrative box is checked or not. If you know your variance is administrative, check the box. If you know it is going before the Planning and Zoning Board, then leave it unchecked. Then next. Enter your info for agent/applicant. If you are also the property owner, enter the same info in the space provided. Otherwise, enter the info for your client. And if applicable, fill out the authorized signatory of corporation as well. Then next. Add the emails of those you want to receive a confirmation once the application has been submitted, or every time there's an update with your application. Then next. Under attachments, you will see the required documents discussed in the PowerPoint listed. Upload them by clicking Select File, or dropping them where it says Drop File here. Then select Next. Under Payment, you will have the option to save your application and return to it later. If you select Submit and Pay Later, your application will be submitted and one of our admin staff will contact you in the upcoming days to submit application fee payment. If you select Submit and Pay Online, you will be redirected to the payment portal where you can submit application fee payment via debit or credit card. After processing your payment, your application will be submitted as well. We hope that today's variance application presentation has answered all your questions regarding variance applications, how to submit them, and what to submit with them. If you have any other further questions, feel free to contact the Planning and Zoning Department.